Brothers and sisters, allow me to repeat the key verses that we would like to dwell on in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7. Verse 7 and also verse 10. Therefore, to keep me from being too elated, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me, to keep me from being too elated. Verse 10, therefore, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities, for the sake of Christ. For whenever I am weak, then I am strong. In Filippense 4, vers 13, die klassieke teks, ek is tot alles in staat deur hom wat my krag gee. Broers en susters, ek wil graag die woord met die deel onder die tema krag in gebroke plekke. Strong at the broken places. Nou, jy moet my verskoon hoor, ek sal 'n bietjie stadiger gaan, want ek wil nou probeer om my Engels en Afrikaans so 'n bietjie meer te mix. Tydens die 80er jare, het die United Nations 'n jaar van die gestremde verklaar. So, in that year, 1980, the Lutheran Church in America decided to bring together a group of experts on the issue of disability, with a request that they must develop a theological document, a biblical document, that deals with disability. Within that group of experts, there were Joyce, a woman whose legs were both affected by polio when she was a small child, which means that she has to use a wheelchair. There was David, a theological student that was blind. There was Karen, an educationist that worked with people that has quadriplegia, meaning they were disabled both in their upper body, their arms, and in their legs. Although absolutely nothing was wrong with her mind. There was Yellen, a person that was completely deaf. There was Edna, a teacher working with children with severe disabilities. And there was John, the father of a child with what we call spina bifida. It's a particular condition where when the child is born, the back is open, it's exposed, so that it severely affects movement and even life. And then there was Stuart, a man who had polio as a child, and therefore his left arm was completely withered and he couldn't use it. It was lame. Nou, hierdie groep kom by mekaar, saamgebring deur die kerk, en hulle begin worstel met die vraag, wat 'n mens aan aandag moet gee wanneer jy met gestremdhede werk. First question, how do you speak about disability? Because even the way you speak, you can actually make it more difficult for people. How do you deal with the myths and the stigmas caused by disability? For unfortunately, because we are living in a world where mostly those that seemingly have no disabilities, therefore, we are in a rush, we don't make time, and we tell the people with various disabilities, you are too slow, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. Sometimes, we don't even share our friendship and our love with these brothers and sisters. Die groep het gesê, die oplossing is eenvoudig. Laat die mense wat die belewenis het, laat hulle self praat. Let the people that experience the disability, let they talk about it, because they have the language. En uiteindelik het hulle besluit, we will speak using the term disability. There are various other terms that they rejected. People are not crippled. They said, for us, the word that expresses our experience is the word disability. But we are not the disabled. We are people with disabilities. Because we are more than just a disability. So, broers en susters, hierdie groep het ook gesê, ons moet nie die ernstige beperkings wat mense ondervind, moet ons nie met ons taal ignoreer nie. Byvoorbeeld, deesdae praat baie mense van, en dis nie verkeerd om so te praat nie, maar daar's elemente wat jy verloor. Hulle sê, kom ons praat liewer van, let's talk about people with different abilities. This is the current language. But I've personally spoken to people with various challenges, and the deaf people say, look, yes, the world out there want to sympathize, and so they talk about people with the hard of hearing. But I can tell you, we are deaf. So sê die mense wat doof is. Die uitdaging remain, the challenge remain. How do you bring people out of the shadows in which they have been pushed, often by long-term disability? How do we begin to appreciate the very special gifts of our brothers and sisters that they share with all other people? How do we become sensitive for the broad spectrum of disability? Because often you can't see a disability, and yet that person is suffering. But maybe the most important, how do we transform the conditions that disabilities brings? How do we overcome and deal with brokenness? Because we cannot be content and just say, now we are disabled. And therefore, let's make the best. As Reggie has said in his testimony, we need to tell ourselves, I cannot leave it at this. There are too much that I can do. There are so much to live for. I need to confront this. When we go to God's revelation in Scripture, we are immediately struck that three of the most important leaders in the history of Israel and of the Church of the Lord were people with deep disability. We don't realize it. But when you read about the life of Moses, you find that he had a severe stutter. So severe that God gave Aaron to speak for him. Now, when you read the Bible, you don't even pick that up. You know that Moses is the one that received the tablets of the law. Moses is the greatest prophet of Israel. But Moses had such a severe stutter that he had no confidence to speak in public. And the name Israel comes from God renaming Jacob, the schemer, to become Israel at the river Jabbok, where Jacob wrestled with an angel. And from that wrestling would come the new Israel, the new person, not Jacob anymore. And this person ended up with a severe limp. His hip was damaged in that wrestling. So that right through the history of Israel, the people were reminded that the father of our nation, Jacob became Israel, had a disability. And of course, the great example in the New Testament amongst the apostles of Jesus Christ, none was greater than St. Paul. And Paul was a person with an acute disability. So St. Paul says in Philippians chapter 4 verse 11, ek het geleer om my in alle omstandighede te behelp. Ek weet wat armoede is en ek weet wat oorvloed is. Van alles het ek ondervinding. En in 2 Korintiërs 12 vers 9 hoor ons van die doring wat hy in sy vlees gehad het. En hy wou ten alle koste van die doring ontslae raak. Maar hierdie doring, sê Paulus self, moes hom vir sy hele lewe herinner, dat hy lewe uit die genade en die krag van God. Dit was die doel daarvan. So, broers en susters, op hierdie pynlike omstandighede van die apostel Paulus, maak die apostel self 'n verbasende uitspraak. St. Paul says, I'm able to do everything, to deal with everything, through the strength that Christ gives me. And in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, when I am weak, then I am strong. It sounds like a contradiction, but it is truth. When a parent is confronted with disability in the life of his or her child, then immediately the question arises, why, Lord? Why us? Why me? Why my child? People ask these questions in the silence. Other people speculate about the reason for the disability. You find that right through the Bible. And Jesus deals with it. And he gives answers. But this is the bottom line. In a broken world of illness, of accidents, of human need, of human brokenness, disability will be with us on this earth, always. It remains a mystery. But there are reasons why God allows it in our midst, in our lives. Jesus healed many disabled people. But he never taught that everyone will be healed from disability. And therefore, brothers and sisters, the world is filled with people with various disabilities. Do you know that in South Africa, more than 400,000 people are deaf? And there are only 4 congregations in the whole of South Africa. 4 congregations in the whole of South Africa that facilitate the worship of people with deafness. Yet there are 400,000. So, if disability in many ways for us is a mystery, how do we, the second issue is, how do you master it? Because we cannot just rest content. Is it possible to transform disability to become a gift that opens our vision for even more important things? St. Paul first fought against the thorn. He said, "Oh Lord, that is too painful for me. It is too burdensome. Please free me of this thorn." He prayed persistently. And God gave him an answer. God said, "Paul, I want to teach you to depend on me alone. I've given you many, many gifts. You have a superior intellect amongst your peers. You have a deep spirituality within your brethren, amongst your brethren and sisters. I want to teach you to depend only on me." And Paul stopped kicking and resisting. God said to Paul, "You will be able to deal with every situation." Philippians 4. "Because I, the Lord, am present, and I hold you in my hand." Don't compare yourself to others. I have a very special path for you. Uiteindelik bereik Paulus sy diepste insig. Not just a mystery, not just a mastery, but even a ministry. En sy insig is dit, dat God eintlik my swakheid, Paulus sin, gebruik om sy wonderlike krag in die wêreld te openbaar. Want as ek swak is, dan is ek sterk. Hy konkludeer, God se genade en krag word uitnemend betoon, waar ek, Paulus, op my swakste is. Dit is nie net dat God sterk is, en ek is swak nie. Ek is sterk, wanneer ek swak is. There is a witness that we live through weakness. And so, the ministry of St. Paul received incomparable strength and power. When you read his letters, especially in Corinthians, Paul confronts people that told him, Paul, you are weak. Your words are strong. But when we see a person that is infirm. Paul says, that is my gift. Paulus het geleer, wat is die regte plek om te skep by God. So, brothers and sisters, there's much that I can still share with you, but I have to keep the time in mind. Let me conclude with a short story. In the state of Georgia in America, there was once a great marathon. Now, a marathon has various lengths, but this one was 26 miles. And there were great athletes participating in this marathon. And there was one particular participant that was completely invisible. But he made the greatest impact. So, they kicked off and they ran. And the winner completed that particular 26 miles, not kilometers. Miles is roughly, I think, 40 kilometers. He completed it in less than 3 hours. And of course, the rest of the pack came after him and they completed this. At the end, at most, people completed within 5 hours. But the marathon was not yet complete. There was one participant. He was a 10-year-old boy. This boy was suffering from spina bifida. He couldn't run. He basically shuffled along for 26 miles. At the end of this race, most of the people have already left. The line was cut. But then, a message started to circulate. There is still someone running. Who? This 10-year-old boy. His name was Dak Axel. And so, this particular message spread through the crowd. And more than 1,000 people came back, returned, and said, but we want to see this. The organizers took the line that they cut, and they connected it again and says, no, there's one coming. And then, brothers and sisters, 7 hours after the first person has completed, here comes little 10-year-old Dak Axel, shuffling for 42 miles. And a great roar rose from the crowd. People cried. They forgot everything about those that completed the race. They remembered this one. This is the way that God works. He transforms weaknesses into strengths. He chooses those that the world think is worth almost nothing. And he elevates them and says, let me show you the best example. Many, many people that joined that crowd of more than 1,000, cheering on this 10-year-old child with spina bifida. Many of them will never forget what they saw that day. And you know what is the best of all? That out of the crowd of thousands that started the race, more than half didn't complete the race. I'm talking about so-called able-bodied persons. They didn't complete. But Dak said, this is one race that I will finish. And he finished it. So, lieve broers en susters, as ons swak voel, laat ons onthou, God openbaar sy krag in swakheid. Ons lewe in 'n wêreld, we are living in a world where people want everything to be perfect and easy. Right? We always choose the relaxed road. It is those that know and understand the real challenges of life that makes the real differences. And through their lives, God teaches us the deep things of the Spirit. That is why we need the testimonies of people that have experienced the sharp end of life. When things are so easy, forget about it. That's just talk. Talk to people that say, I've walked this road. I've asked the questions. I've received the answers. In weakness lies my strength. Amen.